Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's call court back in session. It's 9 a.m. All right, I'd like to go to FY '23 budget. So, Francis, you're on.
All right. So today we're hoping to review the information technology budget as well as IT assessments for next year. We have a capital outlay request from Constable Precinct 1 that hopefully we can fit in there and he can speak on. And then we want to look at permanent improvement with our maintenance of buildings director. And then we can circle back to anything kind of big picture that y'all would like to. We can kind of review before moving into next week. The week after next, or we can circle back to some capital outlay items. But after those items, you will have heard, for the most part, even briefly, all of the operating requests that were additions to this year from last year. So that being said, we're going to start with IT. So Lisa Fetch and her team will be speaking on these requests. And I see her on. So we're going to start with looking at the operating budget for the IT department. And their department is Department 0630. And what we passed out is for the assessments. So we'll get to that after her operating budget. So this would just be in the worksheet on the drive, or we have it on the screen. And so I'll kind of turn it over to Lisa. And so the items we have highlighted in blue are the increased items from the prior year. So Lisa, if you just want to walk through each of those line items and explain the need for the increase.
Okay, good morning. So for supplies, we did have a small increase there, I believe, of $3,700. This area will cover our cable management supply needs. We had reduced it last year due to dropping tapes and such, so we've tried to bring that down where we can. But that's what we've planned for that area, and then other office supplies and small things. For furniture and equipment, we did have a decrease there of $7,475. We have a little bit less on our equipment refresh in the way of switches and UPSs and whatnot. We are ordering, we continue to do refreshes every year, so we've targeted some of those in different buildings. We also try to order spares so that when we have unexpected projects, or if equipment goes out, we have that on hand. So that's what we've planned for there. We're still working on UPS refreshes in our IDFs. I did carry over $5,000 this year for some automatic transfer switches that we purchased in FY '22. I'm not sure whether those are going to come in before the end of the year. They're back ordered. If they happen to come in before we adopt this budget, I could remove that $5,000. I just want to cover myself in the event that comes in after September. And then I always have a small allocation. I've got about $3,000 for miscellaneous tool purchases and whatnot we might have. I have $4,000 in contingency. And for this year, the auditor's office recommended that we absorb what I have been using in my as a phone department budget, rather than continuing to do that. That's been absorbed into my budget. So there's a $5,000 phone contingency in this furniture and equipment. So if the court approved any phone purchases for requests, I would have some funds there for that. So that's what I have allocated in that area. Where did I want to move down to other services, because we're going to loop back to assessments. For other services, I did have an increase here of almost $26,000. This is an area where we're carrying the AWS cloud storage for backups. We had just a small increase for our Civic Plus web renewal of $1,000. I've added this year the archive social cost. That was, let me find that real quick. I've couple of different reference materials. Bear with me, please. Archive Social was $6,000 we added. The auditor's office also recommended that I roll in the PDK, which is our door systems. We have a server that manages many of our buildings. Those renewals have also been added to my budget. That amount was $10,000. And let's see. But I did also have a small decrease in my cybersecurity services and projects. That went down $3,000 in the work that we're projecting there. And then we added $1,000 in phone charges. Let's see, and there's other things that we carry from year to year that stayed about the same, though I'm just kind of speaking to the fluctuations.
Lisa, what are data switches back up there in previous? Yeah, what are we talking about?
So those are our network switches that we manage, the network, providing that into the different offices. And so those age out and, we start having issues and whatnot with them. So we try to stay on top of refreshing that equipment. Another thing that we've been doing when I came into becoming the director here, a lot of our switches were not managed. And so to make the best use of our staff resources and to provide better service, we have adopted to purchasing managed switches so that we can remote into those and do the service that we need to and monitor those. And oftentimes we can be aware when services go down even before someone calls us.
Magic.
So we've been trying to get that. We do some every year.
Okay.
And Lisa, real quickly on the IT assessments, obviously a huge jump there. I know
Yes,
when
sir.
equipment goes out, you don't have a choice of when it goes out. I was just wondering, is there a cycle that we could get on that's more consistent than 216 one year and 870 the next?
I would like to come back and talk about that. That is very abnormal, and there's some reasons behind that. Do you want me to finish the rest of my operating budget and then come back to that one?
Yes, ma'am.
Because there'll be a
That's
lot to discuss there.
You
Okay. Okay, thank you. I knew that was going to be the elephant in the room. Okay, where were we? Were we on repair and maintenance? Okay, that one has increased, let's see, substantially. Let's see. Here, let me check my notes. Something's not looking right. Repair and maintenance.
So Lisa, 43,000 of that increase there was what was budgeted?
The
in
phone
telephone
budget,
department
yeah.
That will now.
Yes,
appear in
yes.
yours.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to read through my notes.
So I have a
and
question about that phone budget. Why are we rolling that fund budget into these different
So it's
into the IT? It makes no sense if we want to keep track of our fund. How much our phones are costing us.
I mean, if that's something you want to track, I mean, I think the operating budget for telephone was probably, I'm trying to think, it was 0090. One sec, we're going to pull up some info. It's about the operating part of the phone system, like the budget for this current year is right under $50,000. And so IT is managing that. They're in charge of that. They're administering that. So, I mean, if y'all want to track it, we can keep it separate in another department. It was just trying to lump all of those costs that fall under IT in her.
Yeah, several
in her
years ago,
realm.
we determined that phone system was more of a, it's a computer system, and IT is where it needed to be, and so we were just transferring those expenses to that.
And we can always, extract information as you need it.
Isolate it,
If you're ever like, what was the actual cost of all this? We can, dig through and pull those out pretty quickly. But if there is a reason you do want a department separate for your monitoring, I mean, we can definitely keep things separated. We were just trying to streamline and consolidate some of those costs.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Jones?
Well, I'd rather see a line item for it in the IT budget. I mean, honestly, so for full transparency.
Okay. Well, we can make a separate line item then in Lisa's budget that says telephone repair and maintenance, and it's that main contract is really the one cost there. So we'll extract that out and separate that out within that budget.
And would I be able to put any of the charges in that same fund then? Because it's not that we have a lot of on-site service, but we do from time to time. So I think that's what the other services portion was for.
Well,
And then, of course, if I order equipment, and then there's the maintenance. So if
we'll
all
work
of those
with
would
you,
fit.
and we'll work with
Okay.
you and get that fixed.
Okay. And as Francis was saying, so that's about almost 50,000 increase to my overall budget. Between last year and this year, the increase, just to state that, was about $238,735. So about 50 of that is from the phone budget, and then 95 of that is our Sophos antivirus renewal. We renew that in 3-year increments. So that is due for the first time again in 3 years. So that was another 95. And then I have a project fund in here I will get to in a moment. And then just some other ups and downs. We removed some softwares that we didn't need anymore in lieu of other products we may have picked up that gave us better functionality and services. So we try to be very cognizant that we don't have redundant tools and things. So sometimes those shift a little bit. So we may remove something in favor of something else. And so we have kind of an ebb and flow there. So we were in the, I think we were in repair and maintenance. I don't know if I covered all of those things.
One more in repair and maintenance real quick, Lisa. Sorry to cut in there. But also in regards to that uppage there, going into next year is the difference in the iSalon support.
Yes.
Which is going to, this past year, they were able to work with us a little bit since we had the move. We had a few hiccups along the way there. So they worked with us in regards to our renewal, but it will fluctuate back up this upcoming year. A difference of right around 11,000 for the renewal for the next year. I just wanted to make sure that was out there for that.
Thank you, David. Yes. So yeah, going back to the repair and maintenance, that is one of the for us outside the phone increase there. I think for our IT budget, it only went up about $1150, and so we saw that in the iSalon support. We had been quoted one rate as a projected cost when we purchased it. When we got to the 4th year service renewal, it ended up being more than anticipated. We got them to work with us. I was able to get credits against other Dell purchases. So we were able to, essentially pay what was promised to us, but we, have been quoted the full cost of that going forward. So that's the reason for that increase. And then the others are just our regular support renewals that we normally see, and there wasn't too much fluctuation there. Then moving to the next big change is going to be the software licensing. So as I was saying, this is the area where we had the Sophos antivirus. So that's $95,000 for 3 years coverage. Our Veeam renewal, this is also on a 3-year rotation. It actually saved us some money this year in moving to the VxRail. We were offered a different licensing plan, and so I believe that was only $3,500 that was added to the budget. Check that real quick. Software licensing. Yes. So that's we'll go annually, I think, from here, and 3,500 is that allocation. Our virtual encryption, that is another renewal. We use that for our email encryption. Our license count has been increasing as needed. Chiquinta periodically polls the offices. We try to monitor that and get feedback from the offices. If they're not using it, we drop the count, and where it is coming in use, we have to add. The vendor also audits this, and they will reach out periodically to let us know there's fluctuations. So we have adjusted that. So we went from $6,000 to $13,500 for this next budget year. Our Oracle licenses, we did have a savings there. That dropped $15,000 this year. That's another area that Chiquinta monitors. She checks each year for different products that are reliant on this, and so that number is coming down. The project I talked to you about, I'd come to court a few months ago letting you know that we were in need of a file auditing tool. We've looked at a couple of products. We are trying to find the most cost-effective option out there that gives us the functionality that we're looking for. So I've asked for an allocation of $95,000. That's the most expensive one that we've seen. It's kind of the industry standard. Varonis is that product, but we feel like there's some other competitive options out there that may come in under that. It's just taking us a little time to evaluate those different products. And so if we settle on something before the budget is adopted, we could come back and potentially reduce that amount. Previously, we had an Isilon project that we were working towards for creating an air gap in our backups, but we were able to instead utilize our cloud backups to accomplish this, and won't really need to go through with the Isilon option. So we pulled that $25,000 allocation out of the budget. For our software support and maintenance, we had a small increase in our audio eye. This is the one that manages our web ADA compliancy. It increased $900. And so those are the variances in that particular fund. Are there any questions?
Any questions anyone have?
Okay. Under software maintenance, oh, I actually did that backwards. I ran the two of them together. That's where the audio eye increase was just for that ADA tool. So that was in that. Let's see, what else is there? It actually went up a little more. Look. Sorry, I'm checking my different resources here. Okay. I think I got my increase. I may have to, I don't think I got all my notes in here. I may have missed some things. If you need more information on that, I think the overall increase isn't but, what, 31,850? I'll have to go back and look. I only wrote a note here for the audio. There must be something else that went up, and I may have forgotten to write that note. I apologize for that. I can come back to that if that's
Lisa,
okay.
and there was just a slight, I mean, it's less than $1,000 increase there. So I think what you explained seems to be.
Well, I'm looking at your before and after. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong column. I was looking at the 18,000. I was like, that's different. I'm actually, where's the 2950 is last year's total, right?
Yes.
Okay, I looked at the spreadsheet wrong. So then my $900 is the correct note. It confused me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I looked at the wrong reference. Okay, so we're good. That was my only increase.
So we need to come back up to IT assessments, but let's just, we can end with that. Let's go ahead and talk through your capital outlay request.
Okay.
So this is in Department 7920. And So there are 4 items there related to the IT department.
Yes. So what we have here, so this recable, that is a carryover project. This would actually be the third year that we try to get this completed. It is very much needed in the courthouse and out at Highway 6 due to the pandemic and all the support demands on us over the past 2 years. You know, kind of being shorthanded in staff and whatnot. This has been a difficult one to find the right time to nail down, but it really needs to be done. So I would like to leave that allocation there. This would be a job that would be outsourced for labor and materials. Some of the legacy equipment for smaller switches and things, those are scattered about. They're in various, you know, above the ceilings and whatnot. Those things need to be upgraded and brought into our IDFs. So that's what that project is for. The next one in the list is an on-prem FortiAnalyzer expansion. This is in relation to our firewall, Fortinet. When we first brought this system online 2 years ago, the vendor recommended the cloud option for this, but we found that the cloud allocation there does not provide adequate log retention that we're happy with. So we would like to bring that on-prem where we can allow for a larger retention period. So the cost for that one is $10,000. This is actually in my FY22 budget as well. We weren't sure whether we were going to be able to get to this project. I think we can. We are going to try to get that scheduled in the next month or two. If we are able to get that completed, I would be able to pull this out of this budget. So if you'd rather put a dollar placeholder, that's fine with me. I feel like there's no reason we shouldn't get that done in FY22. I just didn't want to forget about it and not have funds available for that. The other 2 items there, so Isilon node expansion is something that we carry every year. Normally a dollar placeholder is put here as well. I always like to start with the actual cost. We get a fresh quote every year so that is you know, on the record of what that would cost if we needed to. But I would also be good with a dollar placeholder there. I feel like we should be able to get by on what we have. We have, David is currently migrating the last of our file server, the standalone physical server where the bulk of that has been. He's been migrating off the various departments' files and whatnot. We're getting, I think, pretty close. I don't know if David, if you want to speak on where you're at with that, but when we get completed with that, I think he's anticipating we would have about 80 terabytes available for growth.
Yes,
So depending on what SO, DA, you know, some of our bigger contributors, that's where that fluctuation comes from. Go ahead, David.
Yes, ma'am. No, you nailed it in regards to size there. The only concern, we'd still be comfortable with our space there. The only concern being if the department suddenly had something hit, like we had in the past in regards and a multitude of data suddenly flow in. But much like Lisa, I'm good with the dollar placeholder there for the time being. I knock on wood, but I don't foresee us utilizing the rest of that within the next year for sure.
I'll do, go ahead, Francis.
I was going to say, so through the explanation of this, so this is something that would only be needed if something else.
Yeah.
If we consumed that store, yes. If we had, say that again.
Or is it just something that y'all are like, would be kind of like on a, like, this would be the ultimate way to go? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, or is it just, it would only be prompted to be needed if something went wrong with what?
Well, just if we had a need for a large allocation of storage, you know, all of a sudden, you know, we have an influx of data or files or whatnot that consume the storage that we had,
Okay.
you know, we might need to expand that. And so
Like
this is what it would cost.
Twin Peaks was an example of, and those trials
Yes.
started
Yes, sir.
downloading all those videos and everything, which is a significant thing that happened. So the 104, so we would only use that if something like that happened, or is that something you'd put out there as a precautionary?
Precautionary. Yes, like I said, we're disclosing the cost to you of what that would cost. And this would expand both the primary unit and the disaster recovery unit. When you grow one, you have to grow the other so that you get all the replication redundancy we're looking for.
How
So
much
that's
maintenance,
what,
is there maintenance required once you implement that or install that?
I believe the maintenance we have, is that added into the cost, or is the maintenance we have on the machine cover regardless of the
No,
storage?
it's built into these additional notes here.
Okay, well.
And I will say the only instance that's really kind of, I guess, caught our ear the last couple of years was, I know last year, I believe it was, or it may have been the year before that, where the DA was discussing possibly bringing down their more and more information from evidence.com for storage purposes. Obviously, in the moment, that kind of caught our attention in regards to storage, but that never came to fruition. So with our current day-to-day usage, we're good for probably at least a couple of years easily with what we have.
If everything just kind of stays the same
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so,
with that controlled growth.
what I'm hearing then is that we would be okay with the dollar placeholder.
Yes, sir.
And, the only other thing, what, on our retention, policy regarding that kind of storage, are we maintaining that? In other words, do we have files or data that no longer need to be kept, that we just need to purge the process of purge it out?
That's a very good question, Judge. That's something we've been trying to, talk to our departments about, and having these additional tools. It's overwhelming. Everybody can, it's kind of like your closet at home. Everybody puts all these things in there that are important to them, whether they actually are required to be retained or whether it's just kind of your, the value to you in running your office and whatnot. So these things get put in there, but oftentimes nobody goes back and cleans things out that they don't need anymore. You've got high-level staff that may leave, and so someone wants to take their file, in case there's things they need to look at, and do they ever go back? Do they clean them out? Do they recognize, oh, I have these copies? I don't think so. So I would say there is a fair accumulation of things that are redundant within an office, things that may age out and not be pertinent anymore. But trying to get people to take the time and do that is difficult. So David has started with a couple of our offices to start evaluating the structure that they're storing their information under, so that it's more recognizable and easier to manage in that regard. The other tool we're looking at is this file auditing tool. We want to make sure that people are putting data in the appropriate places and protecting it the way they should. And so kind of having those tools will help us to organize the information, identify duplicated information we could provide to them on a list, work hand in hand in helping them decipher what could come off, what should continue to be retained, and do that
So there's a
in
pretty good
coordination.
chance, it's a pretty good chance that if they're not doing that, it's costing us $104,000.
Yes,
I
sir.
look at it, and I know it's in any office that I've been in, if you bring a new filing cabinet and you stick it in that office, it will be full in a week. And when there's old filing cabinets there that had enough room, if you would have gone back and cleaned them out. So, this is maybe a different subject, but it does affect our budget, that we have a spring cleaning, and that is has to do with not only physical paper and archives and where we archive in our own offices, but also, any.
Digital.
You know, it's not relevant anymore to anything, that we clean that out, because it's costing us a lot of money to just keep buying
I
those
agree.
filing cabinets where they be.
Absolutely. And then Judge, you take, so this is your primary copies, and then we're backing this stuff up. So that's taking up cloud space that we also pay for.
Right.
So every iteration of this, there's an expense behind. So, we really do need an attention on this. It's not something that's going to be done overnight. It's something that needs to be done together. So that is very much a project that we would like to do with different departments. I know David is also talking to the district clerk's office right now.
Commissioner Smith has a question.
Lisa,
Oh, I'm sorry, go
is
ahead.
there a way to enumerate those files that belong to each department or office so that they can be broken out at some point and sent to them and asked, because they're dated, obviously, this file was placed here for retention on this date. Is it still necessary, or can it be purged? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, David, when he does it, David could actually speak a little better to this, but he can organize the data in that way that it has that information, the timestamp. David, do you want to talk just a minute about that?
Absolutely. So kind of what we envision starting with the departments is kind of like what Lisa mentioned there. We would start with the different iterations of the same file, and show the departments, look, you've got 5 copies of this same file in 5 different directories. It's the exact same file. You've got 5 green shirts in your closet that are all the exact same shirt, basically. Which one of these do you really need? And which of these can we take out of the equation? So we kind of start a little bit backwards in regards. We're starting with the clutter, and then from there we're saying, okay, now we've got this list. What of the existing list is something that is still necessary, is still needed, versus what we could archive off, what we could actually technically just completely remove. That's kind of our end game, really. Starting with everything that's duplicate, and then from there, start to work with the departments in reorganizing what they have there, because a lot of the problem that they run into isn't that necessarily that they mean to take up the space. It's just they don't know what they've got out there historically, because it's so disorganized at that point. So
When you work with them, what type of response are you getting? Are you getting a positive response, or is it pulling teeth to get it done? How easy is it?
It's been fairly positive. We've only talked to 2 departments initially thus far. 2 of our bigger, the first being the big the DA's office, which unfortunately there's a few sticking points there in regards to moving the data around, considering the data that we would be moving. So that one's been slightly sideburnered for the time being. We just recently kind of started laying out for the district clerk's office, as Lisa mentioned. We'll be working with them to first move the criminal side over, then come back around, work on the civil side behind that. That way we get a full structure of everything that's actually needed within the department.
Okay, all right. I get the gist of it.
Oh yes, sir.
I would like.
We do get feedback.
Time out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would like for y'all to perhaps during the year to give us a feedback on how that's going periodically, and if you are
Absolutely.
running into any roadblocks on it, because like the judge said, that's a way to save money, and we need to look.
Absolutely.
We need to look at those ways. So we would
Yes,
like
sir.
to know how that's progressing during the year, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We will do
Storage is
that.
at a premium.
And I recommend, Francis, that we put $1 placeholder there, and if they need it, well, they've got it, so. Okay.
All right.
Lisa?
And just one other point on that, because it is very time consuming project, what we could probably do is maybe just do a a poll initially and ask them to pick a designee to work with our office. And then, maybe, I don't know how long it'll take, David. Some offices don't have near the accumulation of others. We might be able to give them a preemptive list to kind of start looking at and considering, but to actually work side by side on reorganization and stuff, it might take a little longer. They could at least delete some of the stuff that didn't have administrative value, so that by the time we got to them, we're just dealing with duplicates and things they may not have been aware of. So it'll be a work in progress over time, but I think we could definitely get that preliminary conversation started and let you know what that feedback looks like.
Okay.
All right, thank you. For our last item, the VX Real Node expansion. So much like the iSalon, we need to monitor the space there. This is the system that houses all of our virtual server instances. So we want to be sure we have money to have that expansion. We oftentimes, our departments will call us and they've got some new projects, some new product. Not everything is necessarily planned in advance with IT. They come up kind of unexpected during the year. And having introduced this environment a few years ago, it has been very handy in having the ability to help those offices in a more timely manner. But it does consume storage and whatnot. So we want to have this available to us as well. And for the project I discussed earlier with the file auditing tool, likely that will be an on-prem solution. So we may have to purchase that expansion to support that system that we would eventually implement. And that's all the items I have.
We're purchasing something for something that we may eventually implement?
It's twofold there, Commissioner. So
David, you're cutting out. You're not coming in real clear. I'll try to answer that for him. So when we say it's whether it's again having that in the event we're called upon and we don't have the room to support new products and things coming on. For IT, I know we've got a project coming up that would greatly help us in the cleanup and data management that we just discussed. So that's something I think is really important. And if we bring that solution in-house and build that system internally, depending on what those resources look like, we could potentially need this expansion as well. So for ourselves and or other department projects that could come up during the year.
am I a little clear now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
All right. In addition to that, I was just going to add that the expansion also would allow us to move most of what is left of our physical servers over to virtual, which would also cut down on our actual server renewal costs from year to year. Kind of puts everything under one pane of glass at that point. And we'll take a lot of the additional needs when it comes to the server infrastructure out of the equation.
Yes, sir. That's something we've been working on over the last few years as well, that virtual environment. We've been able to reduce our server footprint there in reducing the number of machines that we're having to support by bringing them into that virtual cluster. So that saves us the additional cost on those support and maintenance renewals.
To follow up on Commissioner Smith's question, I heard the term "if" in there. So what are the chances? I mean, is this something that's you're pretty sure you're going to end up having to use it, or I mean, where is it on the spectrum from we're definitely going to have to use it to, well, we maybe don't?
Let me ask David. David, how much space will we consume once we get when we get our original virtual clusters decommissioned and everything moved into the VX Rail? What was it, about 25 terabytes available we expected to have?
So what after all of our current VMs have been migrated over to the VX Rail, we'll have about 25 terabytes remaining. That basically will be utilized for the moving of our phone servers. DA Web is is one of the physical servers we'll be using. And at that point, that will pretty much just about max us out in regards. We do have some other in-house physicals that we'll be looking to virtualize. So even without the file tool that Lisa mentioned would be rolled into this expansion, even without that, we would still be utilizing this expansion to
Well,
further virtualize the rest of our server farm.
okay, so then when we move from one virtual environment to another virtual environment, or we move from a physical presence to a virtual, is there cost savings that's built in because we're no longer using the other environment, or we're no longer using the other physical equipment?
Yes, sir. From the physical to the virtual, because at that point we have service renewals usually year to year. Occasionally on some of our newer servers, we won't see that effect for a couple more years because we're still under the initial warranties on them. But for our other older servers that we pay out year to year, those will begin falling off of the budget each year.
They will fall off the budget.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been reducing every year. Each year that that service renewal comes down as those age out and we decommission those servers.
And they're physical servers. And so when
Yes.
when we decommission that physical server and it's no longer being used, what happens to it? Does it go to the auction?
Some of them will go to auction.
David, you're cutting out again. We do send some to auction. Some of them we've been able to repurpose into a test environment. And because it's a test environment, we don't continue to pay service and whatnot for those. We just use them for our purposes internally to test different things before we roll them out in production.
Okay.
We squeeze a little more life out of them. So to answer your question, whether or not we need that this year, I can't say for sure. I'm okay with a dollar placeholder. Again, just kind of declaring what that cost could look like if we needed to come back.
Okay.
On which one? The one that we just put the dollar placeholder on, or the last?
The VX Rail, the last one that's 35,000,
A dollar placeholder there also?
we could. That's the one that's relative to the virtual environment.
I'm all right with that if that's. Yeah, Judge?
Yeah.
Goes down then.
And Francis, you could do the same on that other project, the 10,200. That's that one that we also are budgeted in FY22. I feel like we'll get that done. I just want to leave my option there just in case something arises and we can't complete that.
Yes, if we get right before we adopt, if you're still unsure or not, we'll put that back in there because we don't want to have to do a budget amendment.
Very good.
Beginning of year, but okay, just keep us posted.
We'll do that.
Okay. So if there's no other questions or comments there, we're going to go back now to IT assessments. So we passed out a packet. These spreadsheets are also on the Budget Workshops drive when you first open the fiscal year 23 folder. It's just titled there, IT assessments. So same documents stored. But I know Lisa's going to go into the detail, but I just wanted to just kind of give an overview, budget-wise and number-wise, what we're looking at. So on that very front sheet of that packet, so you're going to see the amount that's being requested in some different formats. So the first one on the top left, you'll see the grand total is $870,505. So $820,000 of that is IT assessments. So those are things that they have assessed and determined either need to be replaced or refreshed. And then there's an amount, $49,000, $50,000, that are other items that have been requested by departments outside of that list. So those are the two main components of that figure. If you go down then to the bottom two pieces, the longer list, one breaks down that cost into departments, and then one breaks down that list into actual items that are being needed. So you can quickly see, of course, that our larger departments are accounting for the majority of that increase there, that being the DA and the sheriff's office. And then if you go over to the right, you can see exactly what items are making up those increases. So you can see there, it is laptops, it is PCs, and tough books is a large cost there.
What kind of books? Where?
So on the,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I went through
No,
that
no,
fast.
no, go ahead.
Oh, tough books.
Yes, sir. So we just wanted to show that so you could kind of see how that's broken up at a glance. Judge Judy.
Well, those are used in, primarily in, the sheriff's department's, vehicles.
Vehicles.
Mhm.
And then, back up to the top then on that top right, again, it breaks it down between hardware and software. And then IT was recommending that we look at, or anticipate a 10% increase in hardware over the next year, in addition to the quotes they have now, and 5% on the software. So, we can budget that in our contingencies in the general fund. You could stick it here, but we just wanted to show you what that amount looked like. And then the next few pages of that handout are going to detail each department and each item. There's one column that is going to show you the assessments, and I know Lisa will speak on that, but then one column is department requested, and so she's going to give us some more detailed information on their recommendations on what departments are requesting outside of what they're recommending. And then just to also sum up on the very back page of that handout, and in the spreadsheet, I think it's labeled future cost. When they looked at the total assessment this year, it was a little bit over $1 million. But what they've done is tried to utilize some current year funds, so they've pre-ordered some, and I know that can change, of course, before the year is out as well. They have in their amount that they are wanting to budget for FY23, and then there are some that they're going to push forward to FY24. And so that's how we came to the amount that is needed for next year's budget.
And
we
how
wanna-
much, I'm sorry, I'm not, maybe not on the same page,
I'm
but,
sorry.
how much out of this year's they're gonna try to go ahead and purchase?
Right at $30,000.
Okay.
And then they're moving about $143,000 into next year. They think that we can get by doing that. Again, we wanted to point that out because, those things that they may push forward to a future year, a need could arise this year if something needs to be replaced quicker than that.
When you say 143,000, or next year, you mean 24 or 23 that they're pushing?
Sorry,
forward?
FY24.
They're pushing
Excuse me.
forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay, they're gonna utilize 30,000 from this year and then push forward to 24, about 140,000.
Yes, yes. And so then that leaves us with FY23, $870,000. Sorry, I didn't mean to complicate that, but I'll turn
No.
it over to Lisa now, and then she is gonna walk through her explanation of the need for these items.
Hey, and that's fine, but before we start that, Lisa, if it's permissible, I'd like to make a general statement about.
Sure.
I'm a big believer in if it's not broke, don't fix it. Past safety and security, I need to see why something that's 5 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, if it's working perfectly, why we think we have to get rid of it and put something else in its place. That's I don't know what the rest of the court feels like, but just because it's not the prettiest or the newest doesn't bother me. And
I understand, Commissioner.
some of these requests, if they're not absolutely needed, to me, that's a way to save money as long as we're not jeopardizing safety and security of our system.
Yes, sir.
That's my point. And I would hope that y'all would look at that intensely under a magnifying glass and eliminate any of those that are still functional.
Okay, I can certainly appreciate your thoughts on that, and we try to be very cognizant of the taxpayers' dollars that fund the things that we need. So I would like to
I have
kind
a
of.
question too.
Okay,
Um,
yes, sir.
how much did we spend last year, and
I can
or
tell
how
you.
much are we spending this year?
Okay, let me get my spreadsheet for that. I have a place where I carry out those budget comparisons from year to year. That goes actually all the way back to FY16 or maybe 17, somewhere in there. So last year, well, actually, let me look. FY18 is the oldest one I have back. So in FY18, our IT assessments was $304,000, actually almost $305,000. In FY19, that was the highest one I'd had to date. It was $460,000. In FY20, we went back to the 304,000. FY21 and 22 were much less, and I'll explain that in a moment. FY21 was a little over 177,000, and FY22 was a little over 216,000. And to speak to, it may have been Commissioner Perry that was asking about trying to stagger these costs and do those replacements kind of in a cycle. And that is absolutely what we are trying to accomplish. And so we set a life cycle for mostly for our PCs and laptops and whatnot. There's a number of reasons we look at that. I'll go over it in a moment. What was significant about those 3 years is that we were transitioning from Windows 7 to Windows 10. And so we began with that. So in those years, we had, I think, around 900 devices we had to replace in 2 years and 3 months before the expiration of that operating system and the security updates and whatnot that we get. So that speaks to the needs you're talking about, Commissioner Smith. You know, we have to stay on top of those things and make sure we can maintain that security. So we had a crunch, we got those things done, the costs were more elevated. Once we had those replaced, we're looking for about a timeline of a 3-year lifespan for a computer. There's components that break down, there's a number of things there. There's compatibility things with newer technology. I'm gonna turn the floor over to Chiquinta in just a little bit and she can give you some more details on that. But for FY21 and 22, we were able to then go back and focus on our scanners and printers and software, considering that kind of a down year in the heavy technology to catch up and see what was outdated there and needed to be refreshed. So with the software being caught up pretty much last year, we've cycled back around. And if you look at the list there that Francis has, you'll see that our software, printers, and scanners are much more minimal this year. I've got some notes here for myself. As an example, this year, I think we have 6 instances of software. Those are department requested, 3 of which are mine. For scanners, we had 15 total, and printers 31 countywide. And that's a split between department requested and assessed. So it's very minimal. So we've kind of rolled back into the PC laptop area that we need to focus on. And we are now transitioning from Windows 10 to Windows 11. The PCs that I've targeted just for reference, a big portion of this is going to be the Dell 3050. Those items were purchased in FY17 and 18. So these items are, by the time we get the funds and make the purchases, they're going to be 5 years old or older. So that's a good life quality or use of that in that period. But there's other considerations as well because they're not compatible with Windows 11. And so in our technology workstations between the PCs and laptops has greatly grown through the pandemic. So now instead of having about 900 devices that we have to replace over the next 3 years when Windows 11 or when Windows 10 goes end of life, you know, we've got to hit probably somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 devices we need to get upgraded and so that they can use Windows 11. So for our staff resources, we also have to think about that and how we can roll that out. We've got to replace it. We have to deploy it. So there's a lot of considerations there.
Lisa, real quickly.
Yes, sir.
Lisa, so I have an idea for a question. Do offices need both laptops and, I mean, I'm sure there are some, but is there any way that we can isolate where an office could just get by with a laptop?
We could definitely run some, get a list together
Maybe
that
just do
showed how many devices were in. I think with coordination of the auditor's office, we could do an asset list or something to give the court an idea of how many laptops and PCs are in a given department, and then compare that against the number of employees. I think you could begin to see what that looks like. I think that might be the best.
I think that might. Yeah, I think that might. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and raise my hand. I've got, I have a PC. I have a desktop and a laptop. I don't necessarily know that I need both, as long as they'll hook up to the network, and as long as the laptop can access the network and access the printers and scanner and things like that. It seems maybe a little, I don't know, wasteful or overkill, however you want to say. So that's sort of mine.
Yes, sir. There has been quite a bit of increase in equipment. I know with the previous auditor, that was one of the things I think he had instituted, is that the language we use when we do these assessments, by identifying what IT is recommending, that is based off existing equipment. And then anything that grows that inventory, whether we support the purchase or not, because some departments that I think initially were offended that we're not calling it IT recommended, like we were opposed to something. We may not necessarily be opposed, but it was a way to communicate to the court that anything requested becomes a growing inventory. And then if we were opposed to something, we should just communicate that outright. I don't think there was anything we saw this year that we didn't think was reasonable, but to your point about whether you have multiple devices, something to work remotely, something that's stationary in your office, we haven't gotten really into the politics of that. If they say they need that, we just bring the information to court. The departments have the ability to purchase technology during the year that never comes to court. The court is not aware of those purchases. And so inventory grows that way too. So, it has definitely grown, over, through the pandemic and whatnot.
And that may be a decision, something the court needs to look at and make a decision on at some point.
Yeah. Hey, jumping back in quickly, I'm looking at our own office and some of the assessments. Office, our barn. We've got monitors that were purchased in 2005 and computers in the newest, I guess, 2018. But they're functional. They're working fine for what we need or what we do, and I can't see the need to replace them if they're working okay and we're not creating a security problem.
I think you may have a 3050, Commissioner.
I don't know what
I'd have to pull your
sheet. I turn it on and it works, Lisa.
Well, I'm glad it's working.
Yeah.
But it may be, so I definitely hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if we waited until, so when Windows 10 goes end of life, that's October 2025. So that's great. We got 3 years life if the machine makes it that long. But at some point, IT, we're a small group, and we support a large county user base. We have to have the time to purchase, prep, and deploy all these machines. We can't do that all in one fell swoop. So we have to stagger that. So it staggers our staff resources, and we hope to stagger the expense to the court. There are some other reasons the expense is as high as it is this year. So I hate to move off this particular subject too far, but there is there's another purchase. The timeliness of this just kind of fell at a bad time, and that's for the Tough Books. It'd be
What?
great if we.
Tough books.
Oh, for vehicles?
Yes, sir, for the patrol cars. So I believe we bought those. I think I forgot to write that note down. I had it in my head a few weeks back. I think maybe in 2017, 2018. I think it was FY18 that those were purchased. And if I remember correctly, when we looked at that with SO, we were given two options. There was the newer model, and then there was like an older model that was soon to be no longer manufactured. The support would be there for many years, but they were no longer manufacturing, so we got a better cost on that. So I believe that's the route we went to save money at that time. And they've had use of that about 5 years now. But the driving force on this, I don't know that they're having operational issues with them, but SO, I hope, is hopefully in this meeting and can support some of this. Chiquinta's been working with SO. She can also add details. But the main thing is Waco PD, who we rely on for dispatch and Tiburon and different things. They are upgrading their systems. They are moving their over to the FirstNet. I think it's like a dedicated Wi-Fi system, wireless system for emergency responders. And the machines that they have now are not compatible for that change. So we are kind of been put in the position to refresh that equipment probably a little sooner than we expected. Let me see if Chiquinta is online. Chiquinta, are you available? Are you able
Yes,
to
ma'am.
speak? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. Excuse my
All right.
voice. It's been in and out all week. Yes, that is true, everything that Lisa is saying about the Tough Books for SO. The other issue is those devices, when they did purchase them, had we gone, I guess, with the other version, they would be a little bit more compatible. But the version that they need to move to now, they are so back ordered that we may not even get them until summer of 2023, which puts them in a bind because Waco PD said they can run both of these networks simultaneously, but they are expecting to be moved to the FirstNet by June of 2023. So if that happens and the new Tough Books are not in for SO and they don't have the new SIM cards that communicate with this system, that's going to put patrol out of commission. So it's best, if anything, it'd be great if we could go ahead and keep this in the budget request so they would be able to at least get this order in as soon as possible so they would have that compatibility. And also their current Tough Books are not compatible with Windows 11 when that time comes.
Okay. My last comment, Lisa, would be, at this time, I'll qualify that. You mentioned that on the request, y'all don't really look at whether or not that's a true need. You just leave it up to the court to decide. Is that right? If a certain department or office has a request, then you leave that up to us to decide whether or not that's a need?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
The only
puts-
problem I have with that is we need to rely on your expertise to tell us if that's really needed or something that they just want. If they already have something in use that's serviceable, that works just fine, but it's simply a wish or a want, then, I don't know how we can on our end really determine that.
We do our best to, we ask for justification. The issue with that is, in the position that we're in, especially if we're working with elected officials and whatnot, we do our best to, ask questions and, suggest, whether, if we feel like if they want a particular model and the specifications are very high end and not, the not necessary for their job, basically, it's overkill. We do absolutely engage in that conversation and try to talk to them about what it is in their workflow, that they feel like they need this quality of equipment. And if we can have that discussion, oftentimes we're able to show them where, we can recommend a different model that's less expensive, that still meets their needs. We take those opportunities to do that. And another example is Heather Travers. She talked to you recently, where she is deciding, we're talking about putting printers at each of her people's stations in lieu of buying another expensive copier machine. We had that conversation. Did it make sense to invest in that again, or to bring this desk side? And in conversation in her workflow, the fact that they have clients from the public and whatnot, staying with them in the office and having all of the technology they need at their workstation made more sense than them having to excuse themselves, go out to the hall, go to the copier. And one, it's more expensive, it takes them away from their desk. There was things, so it made more sense. It was more efficient and effective to have that technology there. So we do take those opportunities to do that. But I will just politely say that some elected officials would not take kindly to my staff or myself telling them what they do or do not need. So I think the happy medium is we take the requests, we ask for their justifications, we let them know that if the court has questions, we'll relay what we can. But if there's a real concern over it, that they'll have to come to court and justify that themselves. So that's kind of been our practice.
We've got
And so-
two opportunities to review that. One is now, and then the other as we go through the year. I do appreciate Lisa's position in some of these, who's requesting. And so I think if any member of the court would ask her opinion or try to talk around the justification of it, she'd be glad to do that. But it really, some of these things that are where elected officials are involved, it takes us to make that call. And so I think we have opportunity to do that, not only now, but also, when that expense comes across in front of us.
And another example, we have had some cases where we've got people with multiple devices, has been spoken to. There might be a laptop, a Surface Pro, different things, different tools used for different reasons. And as that inventory's built, when we did the evaluation this year, where we saw some of that, we went back and asked them, do you actually still need all of these? And some of the people agreed that, during the pandemic, it was necessary for different things, but, things have leveled off and they didn't have that need anymore. So we do look for those opportunities to save money and downsize where we can. But as Judge said, sometimes it, though I don't want to be confrontational with an elected official about what they feel they need.
Yeah, that's our job.
Thank you for that.
And this is Chiquinta. I just want to add a note for Commissioner Smith with the life cycle that we do have out there in our environment. A lot of these machines, when we order them in bulk, come with a certain processor of a certain level generation. Some of those machines, like the 3050s that we got back in maybe 2017, those processors are out of date. They're older age, and it causes slower performance. And we spend a lot of time trying to remedy issues for end users where they cannot function their workflows properly. Sometimes we have motherboards that go out, or we have to send them back for warranty work, or we find out they're out of warranty, and now the department has to replace them unexpectedly, and that person doesn't have a device to work from. So that I hope that helps speak to the question that you had about, is there a possibility to keep some of these older devices if they're working? Yes, but at the same time, some of it, no, because it slows down performance, and then IT staff has to spend time trying to put resolves in place.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Chiquinta. And speaking to that processor generation, that's where that incompatibility comes from with Windows 11. So it makes sense to start with the oldest devices to start replacing those first as we transition to Windows 11. So we have 3 full budget years to accomplish that, and that's where we end up in trying to find my word here, the presentation that Francis presented to you when the guys came back from the evaluation and we saw the quantity of technology here. It was a bit overwhelming for us too, not only the expense, but the prospect of having to manage that, the purchase and deployment of all this equipment. So initially going into this, we thought, well, we'll try to split it up. We'll do the 3050s this year, and there's another Dell model, the 3060, that those were purchased in FY18 and 19. So technically we can get another year of life out of those. I think the bulk of those are performing well. We've had a few instances of support and warranty things, but I'm comfortable going another year with those. So we, in an effort to save money and staff resources, we decided to push those out for FY24. We left everything in the assessment, and talking with Francis, she made a good point in saying it's important for the court to see, you know, the technology that's out there, kind of what that life cycle looks like. So to go ahead and present it in all its ugliness, that, you know, that if money wasn't an issue, this is what would actually be deemed, you know, should probably be refreshed. But because that's not really feasible for my staff, and it would be, you know, a hard hit to the budget, you know, what can we start pulling away and managing differently? So we started with the 3060s. We've pushed those off to FY24. It still leaves us with a pretty high volume. I was looking at all of our numbers. Let me see if I can find my reference here. I think currently what we have in there between PCs and laptops is 423 computers to be deployed by my staff. That is a larger number than we've seen. Even when we had the short window for the Windows 7 to Windows 10 transition, I want to say the largest year we had was about 350. So I am concerned about trying to do that. And talking with my team, one of the things we can offer to the court, I think we could actually even further divide this and say, do the 3050s, half of them in FY23, the other half in FY24, and we could even push the 3060s out to FY25. That gives us 3 years. The deployment's more manageable. We can do that. But with that, I do have some caution. As Shaquenta stated, these are older devices. We're going to have performance problems here and there. So I think if we're going to go that route, that the court, you know, allow us enough of a surplus that if we do start having machines that are having performance issues, we get those replaced during the year. We don't want to risk a machine crashing. To image that and move to a new machine is much better, of course.
Okay, hang on just a second. Commissioner Smith,
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That answers. And I have no problem with pushing those out like that. I have no problem at all with pushing them out.
Okay.
So I think that's reasonable, and if it cuts into our bottom line, makes it look better, then I think that's, I would be in favor of going that direction. So let's,
Okay.
I know we need to move on because we got a lot to do, so I apologize for taking. too
I
much of
agree
your time.
also too. I think that is, if we can spread out the deployment, that would be, I think it's going to be easier on our staff and the budget also too.
Yes. So, okay, we're prepared to do that. What we would like to do, and we can come back to the court if you want, or you can just, you know, have us do that. I haven't evaluated, because that would take time, of course, but now that I know where the court stands, to have my team look at which offices we would target for FY23 versus which one we would target in FY24. And kind of bring that back. So kind of by taking assessment of where we feel like the most problem areas are and such. What I do want to avoid is hitting our departments during a budget year having to replace equipment that goes out suddenly when we know it's been assessed and should be replaced. So, if we can put, have some sort of contingency or surplus or something for that. So if we use up all those funds, we can come back and say, here's some more machines that we need to get on top of, and know that we can take care of our departments in that way. So for this spreadsheet, I think the only way to reference the financial effect of that change, we would need to go into that spreadsheet, Francis, and modify that code for some of these devices. Can you pull that spreadsheet up again, Francis? If we just look at the overall cost and cut that in half and see what that looks like.
Until you know how many 3050s and 3060s you've got out there that you're going to pull, I don't know how you can.
Well, if we roughly say we're going to do half, I've already got the 3060s separated. If you want to go back to your countywide summary and go to the PC. So we've got 265,000 allocated. So if we cut that, just for the sake of argument, just cut that in half.
135.
That's the effect that we could have off of this budget. Just for some quick math. So that would shave off another 132,000. And for the tough books, that total, if you'll scroll down, Francis.
413.
There it is. Yes, 413,000. The bulk of that is the tough books. I think it was around 406,000. With that are the mounts that go into the patrol cars. SO was looking into some other alternatives for installation that might save some money. We didn't get those numbers back yet. So it is possible if they find, before we actually purchase and commit to all this, we'll have to run fresh quotes and whatnot. If we can find an alternative, I think they're wanting MOE to do those installations. We may be able to save some money there. So that's something they are investigating. So everybody's making the attempt they can to pull some of this cost down.
Okay.
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 One other quick note, just kind of looking at that forecast out, we've talked about the next 3 years. Sequenta also looking ahead, we kind of thought, where's going to be the next big software hit or whatnot. So just to speak to the court about this, in FY26, with us having replaced the bulk of the computers and whatnot, we start getting into those other PCs that are deployed. That PC count currently looks like it'll be about 74 devices come FY26, and in FY27 maybe about 96. So we've got smaller numbers of the PCs. We're starting to get where that's spread out more and won't be all chunked up into 2 or 3 short years. So our idea is to get this evenly spaced across about 5 years. So we are working towards that. For software, she's identified in FY26 that the Microsoft Office, Sequenta, you want to jump online real quick and talk about Adobe and Microsoft?
Sure.
Office.
Hello again. Microsoft Office 2016 and 2019 are in our environment, and those will expire in 2025. Microsoft says that they still have a perpetual option that will come out where they're not going to force people to cloud, but it's a possibility that we may end up going that route. But by that time, we will have to upgrade all of these versions if there's a perpetual license out there. Adobe is saying that they are not allowing perpetual license purchases anymore, and we don't yet know what those numbers look like to move our users to the cloud-based subscription. That subscription is pretty high right now per end user. Some of them we're looking at are around, I think, $150 per end user. And it could be by the month, it could be by the year, but until we get closer to that time frame, we don't know what that cost looks like. So where we're trying to strip costs for hardware purchases now and over the next 3 years, we will be hit with software within 3 to 5 years.
What was the dollar amount for that? What was it? for that particular piece.
For which part, sir?
Well, the cost of what you were just speaking to, that,
Is it
So
in the
right now,
check?
for Microsoft Office perpetual licensing, it's anywhere from $350 to $400 for one license, and that gives you about 5 to 7 years to use that software.
how many
If
how many different laptops does that affect?
That would be our entire environment. Now they have version
Okay, I'm trying to get
2020.
I'm trying to get to the dollar amount.
I guess you could say about $400,000 estimately.
Okay,
And so that would come on over a 5 to 7 year period?
That's based on numbers right now. If we had to do this when the time comes in about 2025 or 2026, that cost will have gone up substantially. And that's if Microsoft decides to continue with perpetual licenses where we aren't forced to go to cloud-based subscription. Cloud-based subscription is something we looked at with the court within the last 2 or 3 years that would cost the county over probably $600,000 per year just for Microsoft Office.
So none of those costs are included in this assessment for
Okay.
this year, I believe.
No,
Okay,
we
all
have
right.
very minimal software this year, and I have William online to speak to the software for this year if you have additional questions.
all right, thank you.
I would like to note too, I mean, we've also tried to stagger that software. We generally have, 2 different versions in use at any given time so that can be rolled off and we're not having that one sudden hit. But with the direction that Microsoft is going with this, sadly, that may hit us all at one time. But we have tried to be careful with that as well and stagger these costs through the years.
All right, okay.
Okay.
Francis, what I kind of, one of the things I'm looking for is where there's a big expense and it looks like there's a question whether it can be implemented into the next year. That just from a budget and strategic standpoint, that we look at taking a percentage of that, separating it, and fully, have it fully funded and then a dollar placeholder for anything over and above that, just to be sure that we're not over budgeting. So, we need to know, the chance of implementation of any big expense like that. On these small ones, I don't think we ought to be concerned about that. So,
We'll continue, we'll work with IT and
Okay.
get some more information, and like you said.
yeah,
going
what
that
else
route.
on IT?
And so, they've talked about IT assessments. There's the list, right under $50,000 of items that departments requested
Right.
through this process. And so, in the past, we've gone through each of those, and IT has given their feelings towards each of those and the need for each of those. Or do y'all want to go ahead and start going through those pieces?
Well, so the request is put out there, but the opinion on whether it's needed or not so we're looking to a verbal opinion on that. as we
Yes,
go
and
forward.
and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of times, I think these items that they put as department requested are items that are not replacing something, but someone requested additional. So,
It's a new.
I have 2 laptops. I need 3 laptops. So
Okay.
that third one,
So maybe the quicker or more efficient way to do that would just pick the ones that they say are, it's just for your information, they already have 2 and they're asking for 3. And then, quickly hit those, and then if the court has questions about it, then we know to go to the requester
perfect.
and say, explain to us why you need this additional laptop.
So then
What do y'all think? I'm just trying
There
to be
are
efficient through this.
73 laptops requested. So my question would be, why? If they have a
No.
desktop.
Actually, I think, Francis, maybe the fastest way to do this is go to your we can do the department pivot and just kind of see the cost of the requested total for each department. And if we want to look at the justifications, I think the best way to do that is going to be go to your data screen and filter that by the requested and sort by department. And we can look at the reasons that were documented there by my team. That's probably the fastest way.
And I think maybe what the judge was saying, if we can, and this may be something we need to do and come back to
Yeah.
later, but sort them
Okay,
into.
that we can come back.
Sort them into, this person's just asking for an additional item. We are good with it, but it's just up and above what we would have
Yeah,
usually
the
assessed.
75, some of
and sort
those
them that
are,
way.
I'm assuming are replacements of.
They are,
So,
I'm trying
you
to
know, I
find
don't
my
know that the court, if you do, fine, but,
16.
we won't talk about those, but I think where the court may be interested is where there's additional equipment added. Nothing's changed in the office except they want more equipment, and it may be that Lisa's not the one that answers that question, it's the requester that needs to answer.
So I see we have 16 requested laptops. If you don't want to talk about that today, we can come back and just, the ones I highlighted, we've got 7 PCs requested, 16 laptops, 8 scanners, and 11 printers, which I think probably 5 of those are Heather's that she's already spoken to. Those are going to be your bigger expense, I believe. So do you want me just to provide a communication to the court members on those items and those justifications?
Well, what I would think would be helpful for me is similar to what HR does, whether or not it's an approved request from her perspective. Your perspective would go a long way in saying, hey, they requested it, but I truly don't see a need for it, instead of you looking at us going, well, do you think they need it or not?
Yeah.
I'm more interested in whether you think they need it or not.
Okay. I can do that. I would also like to, as Commissioner Jones suggested, for us to kind of make that determination whether we have an overkill of technology somewhere. I would have to know what all they actually have, how many people they have, and just kind of see what that equipment to employee ratio looks like.
Lisa, I apologize to interrupt real quick.
No, it's okay.
Some of the department requested laptops are also replacing our IT loaners.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for bringing that up, William. So we do, as Quinta said, when devices go out unexpectedly during the year, the department has the option to purchase something from their budget, or we keep used equipment, again, squeezing extra life out of that. We can give them loaner equipment that was removed in a previous refresh cycle. But once those, they're already aged. And so when the next assessment comes up, we typically go ahead and do an assessment or a request on that. And we do support that because they've got a loaner. It's an old device. They had something previously and it's gone out.
But that would just be a replacement. That would be an
Well,
additional.
but we're growing inventory. So this is where we get into that language. So we call it requested because, well, no, you're right. That's a refresh if it was existing.
Yeah, I think what we're looking
That's
for is
right.
additional.
Francis?
Yes.
So I think I was just gonna kind of get the feel of whether court wants to go here. I know that Lisa and her staff are prepared to speak on each of those department requests. They have information on each of those and whether I think
That's
they
true.
recommend them or not. But I think maybe the way it sounds is maybe we could lump those together a little bit and then bring those to you, with the kind of like the HR system, not recommended, sort those.
Right.
And then go through those that way. That might be a better way. Because I know we also need to work on, Lisa was saying we could maybe push some of those assessed purchases into next year so we can work on revising that and then maybe bring that all to you
Okay.
together.
Yeah, I think that would be better because this would probably be time consuming the way it's, the way we have it laid out this year. So, yeah, let us fine tune those requests because we know what you're looking for there and make the adjustments we've talked about and see what that looks like. And maybe come back, Tuesday the 19th or in that week sometime?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on IT?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. You bet.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. All right, Francis,
Yes, sir.
you have some guest speakers today.
We do. So we're gonna move into permanent improvement. No, don't. We should- we should-
Permanent improvement.
So this is the other packet we passed out today.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, go that summer first. And first, I just want to just kind of take a look at where we're sitting permanent improvement wise. TJ is going to talk about the projects we would like to budget for next year. But on this first page of this handout, you know, we talk about permanent improvement funds a lot. And when you look at our financial statements, our permanent improvement fund is made up of multiple funds. So we have Fund 401, which is the fund that is taking in tax money. So that's the fund that we consistently have year to year. And then currently, we're sitting on some fund balance from the 2019 bond issue and the 2021 bond issue. So all those things rolled together make up our actual permanent improvement fund. It's just that the bond issuances, of course, are kept separate for obvious reasons. But I want to just at a glance to show you that top line is our current fund balance, you know, as of the day we ran this, the day before yesterday. So that is what we were sitting in. If we ran financial statements today, fund balance sitting almost at $30 million. But then if you go down into the gray section, you'll see, like in the first column, the Fund 401, we have budgeted amounts there for projects that are currently being completed this year. And so we've summarized those into the buildings where those projects are occurring. But you'll see there that we would end, the end of September, we would end with $3.7 million in that fund. And so that's the fund that we will be talking about today. But then I just wanted to show it to you all together. If you go look at the 2019 bond issue, we do have cash still sitting, but it is accounted for. Mostly, you can see there being taken up by the Chapel Road project. So that was budgeted there, and then those expenses will occur there. And then the 2021 bond issue, that is, you know, you can see there all the way at the bottom, we have almost $12.5 million of unallocated fund balance. And so when we say unallocated, those are things that you have not specifically given us direction on spending projects there. Budget amendments haven't been done, but you know that you have projects on the horizon. You have the downtown jail. There's some other things there. So
Allocated but not identified or something like that?
Yes.
I mean, they have to be allocated. They have limitations what they can be used by.
Yes. And so, you know, when it's allocated, you know, in our books, it's when we do a budget amendment, it's when we have that actual amount there. So just showing what's available for those projects coming up.
Got you.
And so then, of course, there's the 2022 bond issue to add in there as well. And then you've, you know, discussed using some ARPA funding in the lost revenue section also
Right.
for projects. So I just wanted to just kind of pull that in so you could see that at a glance. Also a reminder, this does not include anything for the venue project. Those funds are completely
Right,
separate.
that's a separate, it's got its own source of revenue. its own-
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and nothing also for the zoo bond, the 2020 bond issue for the zoo. We keep that out of this discussion, so.
Okay.
Good, good.
So that being said, like I said, that Fund 401, that's the permanent improvement fund that is generating or accounts for a portion of our M&O rate. Currently, and we can change this at any time. Currently, we're putting a portion of the M&O rate equal to $1 million each year into this fund. So, you know, that'll build, or you'll spend it each year. So then on page 2, this is our next year's budget request. So at the very top is a fund balance summary. So you'll see that we're estimating to begin with about $3.7 million. We're looking at collecting about $1 million in tax revenue, some interest revenue, and then the expenditures, that's what we'll be going through now, the 1.2 million. So. No, you're good.
So those estimated, are the budgeted expenditures is what we're going through?
Yes, sir.
That, which would be,
And you'll see it's
one
pretty
point
minimal.
one seven six six nine two, and that's
Yes,
what,
sir.
okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
So the first section of the spreadsheet, we just have kind of combined projects that are anticipated to be completed. They were budgeted this current year, and that they should roll off our budget this year. So you'll see there's there, and so nothing has been rebudgeted for those, or is requesting to be rebudgeted for those.
All those top ones,
All those top lines.
okay, not highlighted.
And then on the next section, ongoing or carry forward projects. So TJ, I don't know if you want to kind of start here and talk a little bit about these.
Sure.
The $100,000 for Heart of Texas Fairgrounds is part of our contract with or agreement with the Heart of Texas Fairgrounds.
For capital.
Yes, so that is just something that is contract-based and we have plugged in there, but the purple section, I'll be quiet now and hand it.
And it's, I will remind you that that's limited to capital, improvement, which we own the facility, so it's improving our facility.
Yes, and they'll bring those to you for your approval before they,
That's right, we
before
look
they
at,
move
make
forward
sure,
with them.
make sure they fit what we expect.
So like Francis was saying, these particular projects are projects that we started throughout the year and won't be able to finish up by the close of 2022. So the first one that you'll see there, the IT and MOB and purchasing, that's actually going to be an error. We will be able to pull that off. With the last budget amendment, that put us in a place where we can wrap that project up and close it out. So that'll be a good one to get off the list.
So under the 2023 proposed budget, you can pull the 28,750?
Yes, sir.
I like it already.
It's going pretty good so far. The Highway 6 door frame replacement and repairs. This is a project we've started. It's a very tedious project, especially dealing with access and security out the jail facility. So we will roll this one into next year and continue on with it. The building modifications, this is actually adult probation when you see that CS CD. So we typically do about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of modifications over in that building throughout each year. So this is kind of a rolling project to modify particular areas of the building to gain more space. So it's more or less just internal renovations. Archives building, this project has kind of been put by the wayside depending on the outcome of 1211 Washington. So now that we have that facility in the works being purchased, once the renovation is kind of taking place over there in Move Health Services, this project can continue on. We'll do some strategic demolition, open up some storage space within the building and move the current office area on the second floor down to the first floor to inhabit health services area. So this is a good project for next year. This will be a good undertaking. Road and Bridge Precinct 1, this is the modifications for the precinct barn, the maintenance area itself, the roll-up door system. They currently have roll-up doors, but they do not have motors, and they are very, very heavy. It's kind of a security and safety issue for those guys out there to roll those up. So this is adding motor mechanisms to the doors, so this will include all the power that's necessary for that.
How much are those per door, you recall?
The motors themselves, we just replaced 2 out at Highway 6. They run about 2,500 to 3,000 a piece, depending on the style of motor you need.
Pretty big doors then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very big.
Okay, so right now they're using a chain horse type deal.
Yes, chain only.
Yeah.
Mhm. Road and Bridge Precinct 4, the
There's
roof.
no like putting greens or anything like that put in out.
No, not so far.
I thought we were doing that, those doors were in place of asking for a weight room or a gym. We were using those as,
Using those as exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
check on that.
They ought to be paying us for that,
That's right.
okay?
The next one down at Road and Bridge Precinct 4, I think this is the one that we just reclassified as roof repairs. This is not particular to any facility in itself. This is just a line item that we carry forward every year for roof repairs as they become necessary. So this is tree branch falls, something just happens to come up leaking, we go in and make repairs off of this line.
That's actually to spray foam insulation.
Oh, was that for yours? Is that
Yeah.
something that you had put in?
Yes.
Oh,
We've been,
that's what it is.
given you a quote yet, we're waiting on on 3 quotes.
Okay,
That's why that was.
that's what it is.
They could get a little bit on the roof.
I mean, we could
don't-
do a little, yeah.
That'll be, expensive, but it'll be,
Get it back, get it back.
I just did it.
Do we need to look at a roof coating out there?
Is that a
It's
new
only
one?
about 4 years old.
It's not very old.
Yeah, I think we haven't had any issues, I'll say that.
Okay.
TJ, on that roof repair at the Heart of Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, what roof are we talking about? Is there a particular,
There is not a particular roof.
so in other words, we just finished one out there, right?
We did, yes, sir, and it rolled up underneath this line item. So we've got a number of facilities out there that kind of have an aging roofing system on them. One particular is the Fine Arts Building, or the old Fine Arts Building. It's got a silicone membrane that's kind of at the end of its lifespan.
They
So
don't
we're
like it.
kind of, we've been holding off on doing anything with it till we see the, final determination of what the entire scope of work is gonna look like for the venue project. So this could come up at some point. We'll add some money to it.
Do we get any kind of, warranties on those roofs when they put on?
We do. Typically, you see a metal roof will be a 50-year. A silicone these days, you can get up to a 50-year, depending on the thickness of the membrane. We try to, when we put together a scope of work, we always try to push for a 30, especially in TPO and membrane roofs, just because we want to get the longevity out of it. Cost you a little more on the front end, you'll get better longevity out of it in the end. So we always try to push for a 30 on anything we replace.
Thank you.
And so those are the projects, like you said, we'll roll forward into next year and need to have some budget there. And then that bottom highlighted purple contingencies. So consistently, we've been putting $1 million in this fund for contingencies, which, like you said, things come up through the year, and so that allows us to bring those projects to you, and then we'll allocate that contingencies to a specific line item for a specific project. And so then those are rolled forward, and then there are 4 new projects.
Hold on just a minute. Back on, what do you have in on Trading House?
So court just passed the closing of the pavilion itself for our
Yeah,
workshop,
closing in.
and then 6 additional campsites.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we just passed through court this
All
week.
right. And then, this is probably not, and maybe Road and Bridge can help us, I've sent it also to Commissioner Jones, where the lake's low, and I know that the boat ramps, they come down into the water, but the water's pretty shallow way out there.
Right.
There is a little, at the end of the ramp, because of the boats are now getting all the way to the end, it's knocking a kind of a hole at the bottom, and maybe we can push some gravel off in there or something.
Right.
But
and-
also, there's a neck up next to the ramp there by Summerfield that's all dry ground right now.
Mhm.
And, initially it was several feet deeper than that, but that's where the sediment comes in. So over a decade or so, it fills back in, and maybe there's an opportunity to dig some of that out. But,
Right. We are seeing some major issues with lake levels right now, especially at Trading House. Because
Yeah.
the lake level was dropped before we started the drought process, and now that we're in the drought process, all of our ramps are pretty much unusable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a shallow water boat, you can get in off a Hall Drive, and that's a shame. We just spent $30,000 last year extending that ramp to get a little further in depth. But, the bad thing is we've investigated pretty much all of our shoreline of the lake, and we don't have deep enough water to even add another boat ramp that would be usable.
right.
So it's kind of a tough situation.
Well, we're not the Lone Ranger there.
No.
Plenty of lakes shutting down ramps.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but it's a tough year for boating in general.
Yeah. The only other thing, and this is, y'all recall when we had the presentations by Johnson Controls about making these changes and they pay you back over time. Well, obviously, we could do the same thing, which we have been doing. The efficiency of some of our chillers and all is over this I don't see, you know, in this budget year that we're not ready for that, but looking at what kind of savings we could get back by going in and this could be bonded, you know, bond issue stuff. That we would go out and look at replacing those, what kind of savings would we get back over time, over and above debt service and those things, that we need to look at. I know here in this building, probably, this chiller and the one out to Hortex Fair, I don't know about other places, but
Right.
they're old style, inefficient, and there may be some grants out there. Probably we don't get a tax credit because we don't pay taxes, but, there could be some grants out there.
Right.
Anyway.
So in regards to our HVAC systems in general, you know, we still have a line being held for the ARPA funding.
Right.
To kind of replace some of those units, a large majority of those units. It's hard trying to get an engineer involved that can actually write a scope that's gonna fit underneath ARPA.
Yeah.
So we've been working with a couple engineers here in town to see who's best at who can develop that scope.
Yeah.
And make sure it fits. So that's a major project for us. If we were to get that approved under ARPA, I mean, we're talking $3 million plus.
Yeah.
You know, our energy bill would probably be, I can't say cut in half, but we'd take a
Be
quarter. of it.
Considerable dent.
A
Yeah.
Considerable dent, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
How would
Yeah.
that work, replacing those chillers? Would you do it? You gonna do that in the winter?
Yes, so chillers, especially whenever it comes to downtown, would have to be done in the wintertime. We do have 2 chillers, so we have some redundancy. We will see both of them fire up on the hot days. Today, we'll probably fire up both of them just so we can keep cool. But luckily, we do have that redundancy, so
Right.
we could do one at a time.
One at a time?
But yes, definitely in the winter months.
Okay, thanks.
So we've pulled up, there's 4 new projects that TJ's gonna explain for this next year.
So these, like Francis was saying, the 4 new major projects that we're gonna ask for to add to the list this year. Highway 6, the sliding door mods. So all of the sliding doors in SEG and in the SEG district of the building, the controls themselves and the locking mechanisms are obsolete. So this project would in turn take them off of a pneumatic system and put them on an electronic controlled system. So it's a pretty invasive project, but it does need to be done just because we no longer can get the parts, can no longer find anyone that works on the doors. So we want to make sure they're secured at all times. Highway 6 gate awnings, so these are, I believe there's 1 awning over the entrance gate coming in off of Jack Hardwell. This is more or less a shade canopy for folks that are stopped out in the parking lot awaiting to go into the facility. Then the door access controls, that's at adult probation. So this would be changing their current system out that is no longer, or has become antiquated and is no longer maintainable by the company that installed. This would take it and turn it over into PDK, which is our current system that we're using on the rest of our facilities. Pretty easy project. It's just dollar figure wise, it's kind of costly just because all the controls themselves and safety mechanisms have to come out and be redone. Cobb's building waterproofing. So over the entrance of the building going into Ag Extension, we need to saw cut back inside that tilt wall and install a flashing detail to bring the water back over to the front porch. We have some issues with water infiltrating into the front entrance, and this would solve that.
Like with that jail bonification there on the sliding doors, TJ, when we look at vendors that are gonna do that, we look at, how long they've been in business and how long it looks like they're gonna be in business, so they give us warranties, we know they'll be around tomorrow to work on them and so forth. Is that one of the considerations when y'all choose?
It
vendor?
is. It is, especially these days, because, you know, we've gotten to the point, you know, we had the situation in Juvenile where we did install a door control system with a company that we weren't aware of their past history. Well, they have gone by the wayside. We can no longer get their parts. No one can work on the system. So we've actually brought in Sedaptic, who takes care of all of Highway 6 and Jack Harwell, and they are in the process right now of changing out the door control system over there. You know, we kind of use them as an emergency type vendor, security type. So Ken is comfortable with the way that things are done, utilizing them that way.
And they're local,
They're local.
which is a big deal.
On Schroeder Drive.
Big deal when something goes out, it's,
Yes.
I bet it is.
Yes, absolutely. So we would definitely look at a preferred vendor type situation.
Yeah, history, yeah. Good, good, thank you.
So on those 4 projects, unless you have other questions or thoughts on those, you know, just our next step is, if you're good with those for next year, we just wanted to make it formal that you wanted to fund those either out of Fund 401 or out of bond proceeds. So that allows us to set up the budget, of course. There is, like we looked at the fund balance in 401, there's sufficient fund balance there to account for these. So if you want to use that and then,
That's what I would recommend.
okay, we just wanted to make sure that was
Pull it,
clear.
Bill.
Save the bond funds.
Yeah.
Save the bond.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. So we'll load those in, into Fund 401, and then, like I said, we'll have money sitting in contingencies, of course, for things that may arise
Right.
during the year. But that's, and I know he's already covered his operating increases and the capital outlay need earlier this week.
Right.
But while he's here, if y'all had any other questions for him.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am going. Sending a text across the hall. So next, we just wanted to come back to one item in our capital outlay list for Constable Precinct 1, and they should be heading over here any second. I think, you know, there's things we need to look at, of course, contracted programs, outside entities that ask economic development, but I think we've mostly covered on all increases in the general fund this week. So we've gotten through a lot. It's been a lot of information. But this, we want to just, if we could clean this one thing up, and then we can circle back and look at the big picture again if you
Okay.
like before lunch.
Clean what one thing up?
Constable
Oh,
Precinct
okay,
1.
okay, okay. Is he coming?
They are.
Okay.
Good, let's see, morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So in our capital outlay department, there's 2 lines for the constable. One for 2 patrol vehicles with necessary equipment, and then there's a placeholder line for the cameras, which I know has been discussed throughout the last year or so. So I'll let them speak on those 2.
Does this one work too? Okay.
Questions?
They want you to speak.
Like to do a little presentation.
Yes, sir. Highlight of my year right here. So we asked for 2 vehicles for a couple of reasons. One, last year when you approved our new position, we were asked if we needed a vehicle for the position. And at that time, we were trying to negotiate a package of 4 vehicles with the court. And so we waived off on the individual purchase for the new deputy position. And then we ended up not doing 4. So during the year this year, when we've been short vehicles, if we have one break down, I take my vehicle and give it to a deputy, and then I have to get my personal vehicle and drive it. And it left us short of vehicles. So we asked for 2 this year. That's one reason. The second reason is we have 4 vehicles that are really pushing mechanical limits. We've got 2 expeditions right now that need modules for them. The modules are $1,100 if and when TAN can get them. And then with the labor to install and all, it's about $2,000 a vehicle. So we're putting $2,000 to repair a vehicle that's got one of them's got 150 something and the other one's got 170,000. So at some point, you know, we're reaching where we're throwing money away with these vehicles. And then, so that's the other reason we looked at that. If we could do 2 vehicles this year, 2 vehicles next year, we would have eliminated all the old units that are requiring lots of maintenance.
Would the new units and equipment, when it says "and equipment,"
Yes,
would that include the in-car camera then, or is that separate?
No,
That's
sir.
a separate item there.
No,
Yes.
sir, it just includes the upfitting for patrol
Upfitting.
use.
Okay, but, okay.
And
But
you-
it did not include cameras. I'll get to the cameras in just a minute if we can, as a separate matter.
but instead of 4, you ended up with 2 last year? Is that what?
No, we ended up with
You
one.
ended up with 1?
Yes, sir. And again, it was simply, we thought we were negotiating a package, and so when, I don't know who called, but somebody called me and said, hey, do you want a car with this position? And I said, well, I think we're gonna have that covered over here. And so we passed on it, and turned out it was a bad move on my part.
No questions?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
We're close to getting out of the clunker business.
yeah, 2 are 2009s and 2 are 2011. So we have a total of 4 old cars, but. they're
And a
just-
couple of them are pushing 200,000.
Yeah, I've got one at 206, one is at 188. Those are my 2 Crown Vics, 2011s. And then the 2009 Expeditions, those are the ones that need the hydraulic module. It's a ABS system, and they're on back order. We won't even get them till next December, or till December or January anyway. But they're like $2,000 a piece just to fix them for those. And those are at 159,000, 174,000 in mileage. So those are our old clunkers.
Okay. All right.
Cameras.
Okay, on the cameras, the manufacturer has not been able to supply the car cameras at this time.
I think,
There's a shortage.
yeah, I think IT was doing a thing on it for us. We could get the body cameras now, but not the in-car cameras, because the in-car cameras didn't have the chips, and it would be a while before we could get those. We did file for a grant for the body cameras. We haven't found a grant for the in-car cameras yet, because they pretty much say all patrol cars should have cameras. But the body cameras, they did approve our grant. We're trying to get a SAM number, I guess, for the
I
money.
didn't know we approved body cameras though. I thought that was something we were holding off on.
We were until we made sure we got the grant.
We
Until we
put-
were approved for the grant, and the grant was approved.
So you would still need to accept.
Yeah.
To take that grant as the court.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's
We
100%.
just got approved for it.
Whether we,
Is it a matching grant or 100%?
No, it's a 50% on parts, like on the equipment only. So not including the software and
Could I give you a refresher? What we had asked for, and we put a placeholder on, was body and car cameras so they synced with each other and worked together. The car cameras are what we can't get. The body cameras are available, and we've been waiting on this grant to come in.
but I don't think the court has approved, the use of body cameras across our law enforcement side. Now, that, I'm not saying we won't, but that needs to be a discussion, and one of the discussion points was the sheriff's department's not, they haven't adopted that. So,
We have no legal reference either. Our legal department hasn't looked at even creating a policy for it, have they?
We have a policy, and we got body cameras, we have them, but they're like, we got 2 here and 2 here and 2 here. So these are outdated
Okay,
and
so-
can't get, and this was to,
Mr. Perry,
Connect the
do you recall, I mean, I thought we said we're holding off on use of body cameras until we have a policy that we adopt, I mean, you can have a policy, but we don't adopt it, it's, we don't recognize it.
I knew that
Liability
was in
part.
discussion. I was, but I did know too, we were waiting to see how the funding source was gonna work out, so.
Hard, but it,
But it would, and I think what you stated, your concern was, is if we're gonna do this, then we need a common policy that would address every department that might want to use these. So that would take some
Remember
work
we-
with other constable officers and with the sheriff's office to make sure
TAC
that you're not
insurance.
implementing a policy that everybody else goes, well, we're not gonna if we go to these, we're not gonna use this policy. Now we got a problem.
Yeah, and, you know, we had communicated with TAC, Dustin, do you recall the discussion on that in regards to us reviewing legal and us, also our insurance?
Yes, sir. So back in, I think it was on the March 1st agenda, we had the item on for the purchase of the in-car and the body cams and that agreement with, I think it was with Axon. It had been on the agenda and deferred. And at that time, I think we pulled it with no action, and it was kind of pending that they had applied for the grant and to wait to hear back if that grant was awarded. And so that'll be our next step. But Judge, I'll go back and look and check with TAC too on the how it would impact insurance.
Yeah, and then the court would like to understand that part of it, and also add in that discussion, Haley Olson's opinion on it and what risk that we might have.
Wasn't there some question too about ongoing costs that y'all were trying to determine?
It was a
Storage.
5-year contract. And
Like
the
a
grant would-
maintenance agreement or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
and then what would happen after 5 years and
Yeah,
so forth?
the cost would be solely upon us after year 1, because the grant was only covering 50%. So we still have to cover the additional 50% of year 1 and then years 2 through 5. And also, as of yesterday, we also have a new sales rep, and we also need to get a new quote because the technologies have changed.
But when you say the cost is on us on 2 through 5, or,
For maintenance, upkeep.
I mean, how does that translate into dollars and cents? It just, the maintenance is on you. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean like $5 a year, $500 a year, $5,000?
Like 47,000.
$47,000 a year?
Yeah, for body cameras, it was
Whether
2.5
whether
years
we
and then
use
5
it or
years.
not. Whether we have to
Right
exercise.
at 50,000 a year for 4 years, then you're saying.
I mean,
So that's basically what the warranty costs, I
That's
guess.
just a few.
The body cameras, I have the old one, it was 11,476 for the first year, and then 11,477 for the next 4 years. For the body cameras
Just the
only,
body cameras.
just the body cameras, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's all we could get,
yeah,
But that was hardware, software,
and maintenance.
maintenance.
and maintenance and
Replace-
everything.
Replacement of equipment at 2.5 years.
Yeah, and they
How
would-
many?
I'm sorry, 10 body cameras.
10, so we did 20, it cost twice that much. Now, where does it?
Well, not twice, I mean, it would just be 20 would be the equipment, and then of course the I don't think it'd be twice as much, but because the cloud storage, yeah, I mean, if it went bigger, because
Kind of a gift that
like,
keeps on giving.
evidence.com, I think the sheriff's office already uses evidence.com, so they already have a cloud storage for their evidence.com. We would have to get our own because we're a separate entity, I guess, is how that would work, because we'd have to get our
That
own
was all, we need to
storage.
understand all that before we get off it.
And I think it's where we were last year. There were so many unknowns, and have to add this and then add that, and it's cost this, cost that, and we really never did have a firm dollar amount. I have no problem with the in-car cameras. I understand why those are needed. Absolutely. I hate that they can't be found. I haven't heard that from anyone else.
Well, it's not that they are not found, they're short on product because they can't get the chips for the cameras.
I just haven't heard that anywhere else, what I'm saying. I didn't,
And that was for Axon. I mean, that's because we were trying to get the body camera with the car camera so they sync together, so that they activate together and all of that. That was the reasoning behind it.
Y'all currently have in-cars?
No, sir, we do not have in-car cameras. We need to get them.
I agree.
Okay, so Dustin, if you'll line up, we can have discussion specifically on that.
Yes, sir. And April had reached out the other day about the grant being approved. And so we plan on having that on the 19th agenda. And then I've just sent Todd Kiesel an email at TAC so we can report back on that as well.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. And then
Thank
the only operating request increase they had was for their fuel line. So we've been
Yeah.
talking a lot about fuel this week.
Yeah.
And we'll be, of course,
You
digging
don't
into
think
that
you
some
can
more
make it
and
on last year's budget?
getting a feel on that, so.
What, I didn't hear what you said, the operating.
The fuel,
only-
the fuel.
Oh, fuel.
So-
Yeah, we just asked to increase our fuel because
No kidding.
we had to this year, and of course, it won't be enough
So
for
we'll be
next year. so might as
continuing to
well.
look at that.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Join the crowd,
But on that, Francis, let's,
join the crowd.
the factor that everyone's using, let's be consistent
Yes.
on the cost. I mean, they've got their mileage down, they know what they're gonna do, I guess. And so then it's gonna be the cost of fuel. So if we can be consistent, I don't care what it is, I guess, well, within reason,
No, I'm with you.
but
And we'll dig further into the fuel bills, and pull what the actual mileage driven is too, so we can tell that that's not increasing as well, and then use a factor that's consistent overall. So we'll be bringing that back to y'all
okay, good.
before this is all out.
Do what?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, that headache.
Thank y'all.
Okay.
All right, thank y'all.
Are you saying across the board, we'll try to use a common denominator across the
Well-
board on all departments and offices as far as a fuel factor?
If somebody's using $3, that's too low. If somebody's using $8, that might be too high.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know,
That makes sense.
If we have a discussion, we say what it is, you know, we look at the recommendations and say, let's use this all the way across, and then we can,
That makes sense.
yes, I just don't want the department to get in trouble because they under budgeted or we were over budgeting when if we'd have looked at it, we wouldn't have been, you know.
Right, okay. That certainly makes sense.
Well, that concludes the list that we wanted to get through this week.
Amazing.
We can, of course, meet the remainder of the day if there's things we want to go ahead and come back to. But Haley has pulled up the summary again, where we were, where we left yesterday. There was a couple changes made for IT today through that discussion. However, still looking similar. Scroll down to that, the very bottom. So, looking at those personnel items from yesterday, you can see there, that puts us at about a, oh, we're good. Very good. So that puts us at about a $50 million ending fund balance, at 34.3% of, as far as meeting our goal, so exceeding our 33% fund balance goal.
What was that number? And that's current right now.
Yes.
What was that yesterday? Was it about was that 34?
Very, very similar.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, just some adjustments made today. And of course, those additional increases listed there above that blue line, you of course have not made any decisions on those yet, and those are still discussions that need to be had. But, just plugging those in to see what those look like.
What does every, on the fund balance 34.3, what does every 1% translate to dollar-wise?
It is,
On which, on the COLA or on the?
On the ending fund balance at the 34.3 at 49, 913, 445, what does 1% deviation mean?
1.45 million.
Okay, so every 1%, one way or the other, is 1.45 million.
And we have the formula set up to where, as you add and take away, decrease and increase expenditures, that's gonna adjust that.
Right.
So it's ever changing.
we approve all those as is,
Mhm.
we'll end up with 49,913,000 change, which is 1,000,004 over is that?
Oh, that was our,
No, that was a side calculation.
yes. So you're about $2 million over.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
1.3 over the 33.
And then,
Just
and,
to be clear,
yes, sir.
personnel requested is additional personnel, right?
Additional personnel and increases to some positions,
Some other-
reclassifications
Both.
and
All right, and then, of course, COLA is what it is.
11%.
We're looking at 11. And then the jail wanted a 10% increase to those staff, those specific staff folks, before COLA, is what they're asking.
Yes, sir.
And then the starting pay bonus is the 5,000 they're recommending for the new hires, based on, and paid out. It would all be paid out in the 23 budget.
Correct.
Assuming they hired all those, assuming they filled every
That's
position.
true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know what, brings up for discussion here, though, the 872, 857 for incentive pay, if we're going to look at a COLA as large as what we're looking at this year, I would be one that would look and say, okay, maybe because we've got a buyout of all that comp time, which is right at $500,000, right?
Yes, and so, if that's something that y'all move to, we had looked at putting that in this fiscal year. It's still gonna affect your bottom line the same way, but yes, there is that conversation to be had as well.
I wouldn't, I know, but for this given year, with all the issues that we're facing, I wouldn't mind using what we plan on using for incentive pay, buy out the comp time, and then reintroduce incentive pay the following year.
And so what was the matchup? 500, what'd you say?
I think it was 550.
Take it out of that 8.
I'm trying to remember.
Take it out of that
As
872.
estimate. Of course, if, we pay it out, close to September 30th, that'll change. That's just based on numbers now.
Right.
People will earn more comp time will be used,
But
but that's a good figure to
But that
ballpark.
incentive pay is enough to fund the comp time.
Yes, it appears so. Yes, sir.
Interesting thought.
And then this scenario, of course, too, is based on what the current preliminary no new revenue rate is. And so, like I said, July 25th, we'll know, we'll be able to move into the actual final calculated rates. But again, just to give us an idea of what this is gonna look like.
In the positions that aren't filled, that we're still gonna count, they were asking, was it 53 or 6 or whatever it was?
They'll give us 40 back, won't they, in jail?
I think it was right around 100, so 60.
We're taking 40.
The vacancies.
Have those been pulled out?
Yeah, they're out.
Those 40 are out?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right there.
We kind of added that.
At 2.3.
The other thought is, I don't know that they could fill those 50-plus positions in a one-year time. But they could, but I don't know, the percentage, I'd say, is less than 50% to get them all. So go ahead and let's say fund 30, and then $1 placeholder on the balance. That would cut that number. That would give you, that would offset that number right there.
And so that's when, when you look at some budgets, they're set up to have a vacancy factor of some sort rolled into their budget. So they've approved these positions at these amounts. However, the actual budgeted amount to fund those has that factor rolled into it. So that is something definitely that we can look at. But of course, goal is to have all those filled. So, in a future year, of course, we're going to have to increase that budget, looking at, what future years look like. So
It's just, and I understand where he's coming from, is we keep saying, well, but we need them, but history tells us there's no way we're gonna hire that many in a given year. we'll be lucky to probably
We're on.
tread water, yeah, much less cut 53 in. So I think there's a lot of value to looking at keeping them there, but with placeholders.
Weren't we also, or wasn't, Anna also going to look at all departments and offices that had a history of 1 year, 2 year?
Right.
Of us budgeting for a position and it not being filled, and she's gonna give that to us, so that,
And
there's some,
right, and I have the same opinion of those areas as well. If it's been on the books for 2 or 3 years and can't be filled,
they don't get it.
or put the placeholder
At least,
in the event they need it.
Especially if it's been posted for 2 years and hadn't been filled yet.
yeah,
Or even a year it hadn't been filled. Put a placeholder and
Let's just
yank that amount.
budgeting a lot of money that you know you're not gonna use.
Yeah.
And that's,
And I've got a theory about that now.
yeah.
So we wait, we need to get that from her, though. We do need to
Definitely.
get that from Anna
Yes, and then we can,
and plug a number in with it.
Yes, sir.
the other question, we have, is the posting for the next, meeting. Our next regular scheduled meeting is 19th. I'd say the majority of the court is gonna be out for that conference that they have to attend and won't be back until Friday.
We'll be here for Friday.
But I
go
don't,
next week.
I don't know that we're prepared to take action on, since we already have a meeting posted on Tuesday.
Right.
We still got a lot of data that we need to look at.
Right, and there's gonna need to be a lot of catching up for those of us that are out for Friday. But whatever y'all think. if you
Can
want-
we get some of that sent to us if we, laptop wise, that we can look at or something on
Yeah,
email?
Yeah,
Anything that we need to look at?
right.
I don't have a problem with waiting till that following Tuesday, if that's what you're saying.
I'm pretty sure Commissioner Miller shared with me that she'll be out the entire week next week.
That's right, she
Conferences.
is.
She won't be
Okay,
back Friday
okay,
either.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna start back Thursday. I sure hope I make it back before Friday.
Yeah.
Depends on if you run out of money.
Yeah. Coming all the way from Denton.
Yeah. Okay, anything else?
And are we, back that number, you wanna throw it back up there one more time? Are we married to the, sign-on bonus pay?
We're not by sign,
Amount.
no, sir.
I mean, either the theory behind it or the amount putting into it?
Either one.
Okay,
You still have an option on
okay.
the 19th to, you know, we can still look at it, you know, there's we were told there's urgency out there, you heard it, so, it's, but we've got a job to do, so.
Yes, and any other, besides those that they're wanting to do currently, any of those others, you know, y'all give us consensus on what to put in the proposed budget, but until you adopt that budget at the end
Yeah.
of August, nothing is
Set in stone.
set in stone until that time, so.
Okay.
So we will see y'all back that week of the 19th.
And,
When are coming back this afternoon?
I don't think we need to.
Really?
Some jobs for you.
All right, anything else anyone think of? And so, I think, IT, kind of send out a, assessment of that list of that equipment, what you feel confident needs to be done, and what might be some questions on, so the court can kind of get right to it. Anything else?
Just one, you know, I hope that this week, I hope we all feel like we have kind of a big picture, kind of see all the pieces, so.
I think we got a lot to
That
accomplish.
week after
a lot
next,
accomplished.
I envision that being a heavy week also, that we'll, you know, meet through that entire week and have a lot to cover
That's right.
as well, so.
That's fine. What we're here for.
Okay. All right. Not anything else? Well, we stand adjourned and have a good weekend.